you. It's in your name we pray. Amen.
Good morning, everybody. How's everybody doing? Well, if you guys don't know, I'm Sean, worship and student pastor for Karis City. Today is a good day. It's a great day, actually. Not only is it my first time preaching on a Sunday morning, but it's also my fiance's birthday today, July 3rd. And if you don't know who she is, Mackenzie Cloyd, right here in the front. I'm going to call her out. She hates it when I do that. But it's just a great day. And even though it's my first time preaching, I'm going to ask that everyone holds the pitchforks, tomatoes, and torches till we get through the service. As many of you know, I'm engaged to Mackenzie. I love her so much. We've been engaged for a while now. If you don't know who she is, she's the daughter of our elder, Don Cloyd. Back when we first started dating, her dad asked if I wanted to go bike riding. I figured, sure, this is a bonding moment. I'll 100% go bike riding. When we got there, it was a different kind of bike riding than I thought. It was like mountain bike riding. So they asked if I needed a crash course, if I needed help to learn how to ride these bikes. I was like, no, I got this. I don't need any help. They told me that we were going to the easy trails, and I believed them because I had no clue what I was doing. And as we got 5 minutes into this ride, it was easy. There was a nice breeze. But there's a first turn that I see. It's literally a 90-degree angle to the left with a bridge that has no railing. And they're all hitting this turn fast. I was like, okay, I got it. I don't need any help. I'm going to hit this turn as fast as I can. And as we hit this turn, like I said, I don't want to be chicken. I hit it too hard. And I fell face first into the ditch right off that bike. And right then and there, I was like, he's trying to get rid of me. I knew I never had ridden a bike like that before. I've never tried. I grew up with BMX bikes. If you don't know, they're smaller. They're for tricks. But I let my pride get in the way of that. I let my arrogance get the best of me because I wanted to show off and prove myself of something. And I think that's true for all of us here today. We all struggle with pride and arrogance at some point in our lives, if not now. But I don't think we have to. I want to talk to you guys today about qualities of an arrogant person and give you some tips, practical tips of how we can learn to manage our arrogance. As we're in our last sermon of Strong, the sermon series, we're going to be looking at one of the most known judges. We've been in Judges this whole time. And today we're going to look at someone who is known for his arrogance, known for his pride. Who I'm talking about is Samson, the strongest man in the Bible. Everyone knows who Samson is. He was arrogant, and he didn't rely on God. And even when he tried to do everything in his own strength, God still used him, whether he knew that or not. So let's get into this story. We can find it in Judges chapter 13 through 16. Now, I know what you're thinking. Dude's about to make us read 4 chapters in a Sunday service. No, I'm not. We're just going to do some highlights of the chapters. We're not going to read all 4. So let's start with the first chapter. Samson's mother was infertile, but an angel came to her. And we see this in verse 5. It says, "You'll become pregnant and have a son whose head is never to be touched by a razor, because the boy is to be a Nazarite dedicated to God from the womb. He will take the lead in delivering Israel from the hands of the Philistines." Now, if you don't know what a Nazarite is someone who's chosen by God, who had vows they were supposed to follow and they weren't supposed to break. We can find those vows in Numbers 6, verse 1. In Numbers 6:1, they weren't supposed to cut their hair, was the first one. The second one, they cannot drink any wine or fermented drinks. And the third, they couldn't touch any dead animal or carcasses of any kind, anything unclean. And now, as we get to chapter 14, Samson is much older. We see Samson going to a town called Timnah, a town that is controlled by the Philistines. As Samson was walking around this city, he sees someone in the corner of his eye. He sees a woman, and he thinks she's beautiful, gorgeous even. He returns home to his father, and he tells his father, he's like, "I want you to go get this woman in Timnah, and I want you to bring her back to me so that I can marry her." His parents tried to convince him otherwise. Maybe, Samson, you should date an Israelite woman, maybe someone of our own place. And he said, "No, I want that Philistine woman." Samson wanted what he wanted. I want to see if parents caught this particularly. We see Samson telling his father what he wanted rather than what his father thought was best for them. Kids do that, right? Was I not the only one growing up doing that? Parents know what's best for their child, especially when an angel came to them telling him what his life would be, who he was. Parents know what's best for us. We could see Samson's arrogance. Samson didn't care for the advice or the wisdom. He was only worried about Samson. He didn't care that the woman was a Philistine. He wanted what he wanted. Arrogant people don't listen to the counsel of others. That's the first quality that we see of an arrogant person, of Samson. God had a plan for Samson to lead his people from the Philistines. But Samson was only worried about Samson. It was all about him. Just as God had a plan for him, he also had a plan for us. Sometimes we try to zigzag through that. Sometimes we try to get to the fastest point. We stray off that path sometimes, whether that's being disobedient or just not listening. I know that all of us have told our parents what we are going to do at one point in our life. I'm going to go do this, Mom. I'm going to go do this, Dad. Sometimes it ends with a spanking or you're grounded, but we've all done it. And when we do it, most times, it doesn't work out for us. We try to do it our own way, and it doesn't work. But maybe we should take a second. Listen to our parents. Listen to our mentors, our wise friends, our accountability partners. Or for students, for kids, your parents. They've gone through what you've gone through. They've struggled with what you've struggled with. They usually know what's best. They're wiser than us. If we just take a minute and listen to the advice that we're given, maybe it can save our rear sometimes. What if we listen to the people who are wiser than us? Maybe they'll save us sometimes. I know it's hard, but maybe next time, before you're going to tell someone what you're going to do, maybe listen to the advice that they have for you. So Samson went with his father and mother to Timnah, and when they arrived, a young lion, it's a young lion, but it's a lion out of all things, it came rushing out towards them. The Spirit of the Lord came upon Samson, and he took the lion by the jaws and ripped it right in half, like a young goat. And that's what it says in Scripture. I don't know about y'all, but I don't see any of y'all ripping a goat in half. I don't see it. As they enter the town, Samson meets the girl. And in Scripture, it says he liked her, but with my super creative mind, I picture it as love at first sight. Sometime later, when they went back to Timnah to get married, he found that same lion. It was dead. Samson noticed that there was honey and bees in the carcass. And Samson thought, that honey looks good, and I want that honey. Samson scoops it out, and he ate it. He also brought some back to his parents, and he gave it to them, but he did not tell them where he got it. Samson's father goes to see the bride, and during this, Samson throws a feast for everyone. In modern translation, a feast is a keg party for college students at a frat house. That's what a feast is. But remember, Nazarites have 3 big vows, 3 rules they were supposed to follow. Samson breaks 2 of them here. Samson thinks that he can do whatever he wants without consequence, that he can make and break any rule. And this is the second quality we see of arrogant people. Arrogant people make their own rules. Sometimes we try to find loopholes or justify our actions, or we might just flat out break them. Like the rules don't apply to us. We make our own. But rules are in place for us to follow, because if we don't, it's chaos without them. If we didn't have rules, everybody would be running up the streets trying to steal whatever they wanted, taking whatever they wanted. It'd be chaos. They're put in place so that we don't mess up, so that we can be successful, so that we can learn from them. But sometimes we take shortcuts. Sometimes we try to find loopholes in the rules to get what we want faster. My mom used to tell me all the time that if I'm going to do something, do it correctly, the first time so that you don't have to do it over and over and over and over again to be successful. And I didn't listen to her, but now I'm thinking, yeah, I wish I would have done it right the first time and having to do it 15 other times and then just get annoyed. The same can be said for rules. Why would we break rules or find loopholes when we could just easily follow those rules the first time? When we could easily just follow the vows the first time? We aren't free to do whatever we want. And not because God is controlling, but because he knows what's best for us. His rules are designed us to give the best possible life, not to make us feel like we're controlled and in a cage, but to give us a successful life, to give us a stress-free life. What if we actually followed the rules? What if we actually listened and obeyed the rules instead of doing what we wanted? During this festival, there's 30 men who are basically groomsmen at this point. They were picked. They're now part of the wedding, and Samson sees this. He tries to make a bet with them, one that he can only win. He tells them a riddle, and it's in chapter 14, verse 14. He replied, "Out of the eater, something to eat. Out of the strong, something sweet. For 3 days, they couldn't give him an answer." Now, the men don't have the answer, obviously, because this riddle is what Samson did scooping honey out of a lion. No one saw that. No one knows what happened. They couldn't answer this riddle. They knew they couldn't answer the riddle. So they go to Samson's bride, and they threaten her. And they say, "You're going to tell us the answer to his riddle, or we're going to kill you and your father." She ended up going to him and nagging him, begging him, pleading over and over again, until he finally told her the answer. The men got back and they answered the riddle, and Samson was furious. He was so angry. He's like, "I know what y'all did. There's only one other person that knew the answer to this riddle." He knew. And because of this, he went and killed 30 other Philistines to get the reward of that bet, to get the cloths off their back for the 30 that answered the riddle. Samson leaves his bride there, which causes his wife to be given to the best man, essentially. And I'll let you guys guess who was upset with this. It was Samson. He was so mad, but it was his own fault. He put himself in that situation. He had to make a riddle that no one could answer. He had to be smart. He had to try to get the way he wanted. He didn't like it, but it was his own fault. His pride and him being offended is what led him there. When he found out his wife was taken, he lashed out at the Philistines, and he had one mission at this point, and this mission was revenge. And he did something so insane that I don't know if I would ever be able to, I know I wouldn't see this in modern times. He captured 300 foxes. I can't capture one. I don't know anyone that can capture one. He captured them, tied them up, and lit their tails on fire and let them loose on the grain storage of the Philistines, practically their food source. He hit them where it hurt them. Samson was furious with what happened. He was offended. His pride, his ego was hurt because someone got the better of him. They used his wife against him. They took revenge, and then he took it back because he wants to have the last say. He wants to have the last lash, which leads me to my third quality of an arrogant person. Arrogant people are offended easily. Samson didn't want to be hit last. He had to have that last punch. He has to have the last say. He has to win the argument. He won't be the last one to get hit. He burned their food and hit the Philistines where it hurt. But how easy do you think it could have been if he would have just let it go? How easy do you think his life would be now if he would have let it go? He could have moved on, gotten married, had kids, been devoted to God if he would have let it go. He didn't let the riddle go. Samson instead was being a very selfish and offended person, reacting out of pettiness. He always had to have the last say, last blow. And we do the same thing. Sometimes our ego, our pride gets hurt. I know that I can be a very prideful person. When it comes to music, I used to not listen to anyone who gave me advice except for people I knew were way better than me. There's a story when I was back at SAGU. I was a music director. If you don't know what that is the guy who's in the microphone talking to people, leading the band of where the direction goes with the worship leader. And we had worship nights sometimes. And after that worship night, when I had played lead guitar and was the music director, we finished the set. Some of my friends came up to me and they told me, your tone could have been a little different this way. You could have done a little extra things. And I looked at them and I was like, you're wrong. I didn't say it like that, but that's what I was thinking. I would never do that. But I just looked at them with like a disgusting face and I was like, no, you're wrong. I'm right. I know I sounded amazing. But 5 minutes later, my director shows up and he tells me the exact same advice. And I looked at him, I was like, ooh. I felt bad. I thought I was right. Just because I had more years of playing, I thought I was right. I didn't listen to the advice of my friend. But I know I take the advice of my director who has poured into me to heart. And when I realized it was the same advice, I knew that I got offended because someone who was not as good tried to give me that same advice. I was offended. I wouldn't let that go. I was in awe. Sometimes we just need to listen to what is being said to us or to look at what's happening. Think about the situation. Think about what's going on. Take a few seconds to think before reacting hastily. What if we just took a little bit of time to think about the situation, to think about the words that were just said to us, rather than immediately spitting out a response to that person in offense, in pride, in pettiness? Back to Samson's story. 20 years now have passed. We're in chapter 16. Samson now arrives to the city known as Gaza, where he finds a prostitute, and it's in verse 1 through 5. One day, Samson went to Gaza where he saw a prostitute. He went in to spend the night with her. The people of Gaza were told, Samson is here, so they surrounded the place and lay in wait for him at night at the city gate. They made no move during the night, saying, at dawn we will kill him. But Samson lay there only until the middle of the night. Then he got up, took a hold of the doors of the city gate together with the 2 posts and tore them loose, bar and all. He lifted them to his shoulders and carried them to the top of the hill that faces Hebron. Sometimes later he fell in love with a woman in the valley of Sorek whose name was Delilah. The rulers of the Philistines went to her and said, see if you can lure him into showing you the secret of his great strength and how we can overpower him so that we may tie him up and subdue him. Each one of us will give you 1,100 shekels of silver. You would think Samson would have learned something at this point. You would think that after all these years, he would have learned something. But here he is, going down the wrong path again, sleeping with a prostitute in Gaza. He not only does that, but he also falls in with love with another woman who wasn't even that great of a woman and was bribed again with money or threatening. Now, 1,100 shekels of silver is now probably about 550 years of pay here, but still, she asked him time and time again, where does your strength come from? And he didn't tell her. She nagged him, begged him over and over until he was sick to death and tired of it. He finally gave in and told her. This is in verse 17. We see, so he told her everything. No razor has ever been used on my head. He said, because I have been a Nazarite dedicated to God from my mother's womb. If my head were shaved, my strength would leave me, and I would become as weak as any other man. Samson now has fallen asleep. Delilah put him to sleep. And as the Philistines were told about what had happened by Delilah had someone cut his hair. His strength had left him. When he woke up, Delilah told Samson, yelling, the Philistines are here. They are waiting outside, here to capture you. And he went outside to try to go take care of it. Try to be the big old macho man. Little did he know his strength was gone. He had no clue that he wasn't going to win that fight. The Philistines captured him, gouged his eyes out, and chained him up to pillars with bronze shackles. He was blinded, haircut, and chained to pillars. Samson had everything given to him. He was a judge, a Nazarite, dedicated to God. A man who even killed thousands of Philistines with a donkey jawbone. A donkey jawbone. Really? How could he have been on the edge of death? Eyes gouged out, chained to pillars, with everything he was given. It's because he was blinded by his own arrogance. Samson was blinded by the fact he thought he was better. At the close of chapter 16, in verses 28 through 30, it says, "Then Samson prayed to the Lord, 'Sovereign Lord, remember me. Please, God, strengthen me once more and let me, with one blow, get revenge on the Philistines from my two eyes.' Then Samson reached towards the two central pillars and on which the temple stood, bracing himself against them, his right hand on the one and his left hand on the other. Samson said, 'Let me die with the Philistines.' And then he pushed with all of his might, and down came the temple on the rulers and all of the people in it. Thus he killed many more when he died than he did his whole life." Even in his dying moments, we see him be prideful. The prayer that he asks God for strength is not a prayer of, "Let me fulfill your will." It's a prayer of, "Give me the strength so that I can take my revenge on these Philistines for what they did to me." That's a prideful, arrogant prayer. He wants to get revenge. He's asking God to fill him with the strength for his own self, not to accomplish the will of God. So how could have Samson avoided this difficult ending to his life? What different choices would he have been able to take to go down a different path, where he didn't end up in change, where he didn't end up blinded? Now, I know a lot of parents in here are thinking right now, he should have listened to his dad. You're right. You're 100% right. But not only that, he also could have followed his vows. There were many times that he could have stopped and not been blinded by arrogance, but his small actions caused him to fall. Every little action he did built up and built up and built up over and over until it came tumbling down. And that's the same for us. It's these actions that sometimes we take, we think, that lead us to fall. We don't just do it in an instant. It's not overnight where we lose ourselves to an addiction that we've been having. Maybe it's a process of starting. It builds up. There are many times that he could have stopped. And it's these actions that lead us to falling, just like Samson did. It was over the span of his whole life where he messed up over and over and over again that caused him to fall. Now for us, it may not be battling Philistines and being wronged by someone bribed. For us, it could be a small thought in the back of your head where you're working and a coworker wants to flirt with you, and you decide to flirt back because you think she's pretty. Or that it's okay and it's only going to happen this one time. I won't do it again. I won't get addicted. It's easy. I can break away from it. How are you blinded? How are you blinded by arrogance? Maybe it is that small thought. Maybe it is just the one time that I'm thinking it's okay. Your life may not be falling apart now, but it's probably not heading down a good path if it is that. We mainly get caught up in some kind of addiction, a pattern that leads us to our fall. Eventually, just like Samson did. Those decisions, the pride, the arrogance, it catches up to you. It hits you all at once after a time of doing it. Everything changed for Samson when he asked God for help because he realized he couldn't do it alone. What he didn't realize is that God was already there waiting for him with arms wide open. I'm here for you whenever you need me, whenever you turn around. When we ask for help, God shows up because despite our arrogance, he still loves us. He still cares for us, and he nurtures us. When we are at a low point of our life, no matter how many steps away, God's there. God is always there, ready for us to turn around when we're off our path. So I want you to notice something about Samson's story. Even when Samson was praying arrogantly, God still answered him and delivered the Israelites from the Philistines. And if God can do that through an arrogant Samson, imagine what he could have done with a devoted one. Imagine what he could do through you, devoted to him. He saved the Israelites from the Philistines. In today's world, even if you're just starting out being devoted to God, just think of what he could do for you, through you, with you. God is waiting for us to come back, whether it's for the first, 10th, or the 100th time. No matter how many times we fall off our path or we turn away from him and walk the other way, he's there for us to come back every single time. All we have to do sometimes is maybe calling out his name, going to someone, asking for forgiveness, asking for guidance. Living a self-driven life will only get you so far. You need to realize that you can't do it alone. And Samson realized he needed that strength of God when he was lost. And we have to do the same thing. We need to turn back to God. So what are some ways that we can do that? The first, maybe for you, it is finding someone who's wiser than you. Maybe it is you need to listen to the counsel of others, whether that be a mentor, an accountability partner, your boss, for kids, your parents. Maybe it's just listening to others and taking that advice to heart. The second way is you could change maybe just by following the rules. Maybe we just like to disobey the rules. Maybe we like to find that loophole. But we can change by just following the rules. Listening. Maybe you think they don't apply to you. Maybe you should be obedient to God. Listen to the commands that he has for you, rather than thinking it doesn't apply to you. And lastly, maybe you need to work on not being offended so much. I like to use this quote by the famous philosopher Nathan Reimer. As Christians, we need to have soft hearts and thick skin. We are called to be soft-hearted, not hard-headed. It'll take some work. But if you guys soften your hearts, it opens us up to a stress-free life, a better relationship with God and with others. We're not always thinking about having to have the last fight, having to have the last word, but letting it go, letting God take care of it. If you're tired of living a life that makes you feel like you're fighting alone, don't. Just turn back to God. When I fell off my bike, Don didn't just leave me there, Mr. Cloyd, as I like to say. Right after I busted my butt, he picked me back up. He was there every step of the way, teaching me when I needed to be taught and helping me on that amazing journey. And I still look back at our relationship now knowing that that was some of the most fun I've ever had with him. Riding a bike that I fell off prideful. God is waiting for us with arms wide open if we turn back to him, because he's faithful and he will provide for us when that happens. So let me ask you something. Are you blinded by your situation, or can you see it clearly? Are you living by your own strength? Or are you living by the strength of God, relying on him when it gets hard? Let's pray.